Karen Pembleton stood in her pristine kitchen at 6:47 a.m., her manicured finger hovering over the speed dial for the military police at Fort Braxton. The audacity of her new neighbor, a decorated army sergeant who dared to park his government-issued Humvee in his own driveway, had pushed her past her breaking point. "This is Karen Pembleton, HOA president of Willowbrook Estates," she announced into the phone with the authority of someone who'd never questioned her own righteousness. "I need to report a violation of our community standards by one of your soldiers." 20 minutes later, as she marched across her perfectly manicured lawn in her designer athleisure wear, Karen clutched a manila folder thick with photographs, property codes, and what she considered irrefutable evidence. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez was loading his 2 young daughters into his pickup truck for school, his wife Sarah waving goodbye from the doorway. The sight of their domestic bliss only fueled Karen's indignation. Didn't they understand that their happiness meant nothing compared to property values? "Excuse me, Sergeant Rodriguez," Karen called out, her voice dripping with false civility as she approached their driveway. The massive olive-green Humvee sat like a monument to everything she despised about her changing neighborhood. "We need to discuss your vehicle situation." Mike straightened up, his weathered face showing the patience of a man who dealt with far worse than suburban tyrants. "Morning, Mrs. Pembleton. What can I do for you?" "It's about your military truck," Karen said, waving her folder like a weapon. Section 4.7 of our HOA agreement clearly states that all vehicles must maintain aesthetic harmony with our community standards. That eyesore is bringing down everyone's property values. Sarah stepped forward, her nurse scrubs suggesting she was heading to her shift at the VA hospital. "Karen, with all due respect, Mike serves our country. That vehicle is necessary for his duties. I don't care if he's defending democracy itself," Karen snapped, her mask of politeness finally slipping. "Rules are rules. I've already contacted his commanding officer to discuss this situation." The color drained from Mike's face. Karen felt a surge of satisfaction. Finally, she was being taken seriously. But then she noticed the way Sarah's jaw tightened, how Mike's daughters stopped their chatter in the back seat, and how several neighbors had emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. "You called my CO?" Mike's voice was dangerously quiet. "Over a parking issue?" "I called the appropriate authorities," Karen replied, lifting her chin defiantly. "Someone needs to enforce standards around here." What Karen didn't know was that her phone call had already set off a chain reaction at Fort Braxton. Major Patricia Wells, Mike's commanding officer, had served 3 tours with him in Afghanistan. She'd also grown up in an HOA community where her own military father had faced similar harassment. The message Karen left wasn't just about a parking dispute, it was about respect, sacrifice, and the price of service. By noon, Karen's victory felt hollow. The promised visit from base housing officials never materialized. Instead, she received a certified letter from the base's legal department, followed by calls from local news stations who'd somehow gotten wind of her complaint. Her social media notifications were exploding, but not with the support she'd expected. The first crack in Karen's armor appeared when her own husband, Dave, arrived home early from his insurance office. "Karen, what the hell did you do?" he demanded, holding up his phone. "My clients are calling, asking if I'm married to the woman who's harassing war veterans. I'm protecting our investment," Karen protested, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "This house is our retirement fund. Our neighbor earned a Purple Heart, Karen. He lost 2 friends in Kandahar, and you're worried about his truck." For the first time in years, Karen felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. But instead of retreat, she doubled down, her fear manifesting as even greater aggression. By the next morning, Willowbrook Estates had transformed into a battlefield, and Karen found herself commanding an army of one. She stood at her living room window, watching in horror as news vans lined the street and protesters gathered with signs reading, "Support our troops," and "HOA Karen strikes again." Her morning coffee grew cold as she realized the story had gone viral overnight, not as vindication of her position, but as a cautionary tale about suburban tyranny. "Channel 7 is at the front door," Dave announced, his face pale with embarrassment. They want a statement. Perfect, Karen said, straightening her shoulders. I'll explain how this is really about maintaining community standards. But even as she spoke, doubt crept into her voice. The woman who'd once commanded board meetings with military precision now felt her confidence wavering. The interview was a disaster. Standing on her front porch, Karen faced reporter Jennifer Hayes, whose questions felt like precision strikes. Mrs. Pembleton, Sergeant Rodriguez has served 4 combat tours. Don't you think he's earned the right to park his work vehicle at home? Military service doesn't exempt anyone from community rules, Karen replied, her media training from her corporate days kicking in. But the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Even when those rules specifically target veterans, Hayes pressed. We've obtained documents showing you filed 17 complaints against military families in the past 2 years, compared to 0 against civilian neighbors. Karen's carefully constructed narrative crumbled. That's not. I enforce rules equally. But the damage was done. As the interview aired that evening, Karen watched herself on television and saw what everyone else saw, a woman so consumed by control that she'd lost sight of basic human decency. The comments section was brutal, but one stood out, a message from her own sister. Mom would be ashamed of you. The next day brought unexpected visitors. A convoy of motorcycles rumbled into Willowbrook Estates, their riders wearing veterans' patches and American flags. They weren't there to intimidate, they were there to show solidarity with Mike Rodriguez. The sight of dozens of veterans peacefully assembled in her neighborhood broke something inside Karen. She found herself walking across the street, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. Mike was in his garage, working on his daughter's bicycle, while Sarah tended to their small garden. They looked up as she approached, their expressions wary, but not hostile. I owe you an apology, Karen said, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. I was wrong. Mike set down his wrench, studying her face. What changed? Karen struggled to articulate the transformation happening inside her. I saw myself on TV last night. I saw what I'd become. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. My father was Navy. He would have been disgusted with me. Sarah stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. We've all lost sight of what matters sometimes. I don't know how to fix this, Karen admitted. The whole internet thinks I'm a monster. Maybe start with the HOA rules, Mike suggested quietly. Make them fair for everyone. Over the following weeks, Karen worked to dismantle the very system she'd spent years perfecting. She revised the community guidelines, removing restrictions that disproportionately affected military families. She faced down angry neighbors who accused her of betraying her principles. But for the first time in years, she slept peacefully. The media attention eventually died down, but the veterans' motorcycles still made regular stops in Willowbrook Estates, not as protesters, but as friends visiting Mike and his family. Karen found herself waving from her window, sometimes even bringing out coffee for the riders. But late at night, when the neighborhood was quiet, Karen often stood at that same window, wondering if redemption was truly possible or if she was just playing a new role in an ongoing performance. The woman who'd once ruled through fear now faced her greatest challenge, learning to live with uncertainty. The mystery that lingered wasn't whether she'd changed, but whether change could truly erase the damage she'd done to her community, to her family, and to herself.